Before we start, come on visit thedealconfidence.com and click the subscribe button and also hit like. If you want to be updated on our new upload, just hit the notification bell and you'll be updated automatically. Now let's proceed to the video.
Because I want to touch on seller financing and why that's relevant. Okay, let me talk about this. If you come up with any questions, it is 7:05, so we're at the hour mark, just over the hour mark. I'll make this quick, but this is relevant to what Mark and Addie just talked about, because here's the deal. A landlord is probably the best seller for seller financing because they're already used to getting payments over time. They're already used to collecting rent payments on a monthly basis. So they're preconditioned to be comfortable with the idea of, I'm going to pay you this much upfront and this much every month. The beauty is, and let's just use, well, we can use Oklahoma as an example, because Oklahoma is also a fairly fast evict, relatively speaking. This case notwithstanding, it's generally speaking a fast evict state. So in about a month, month and a half, you can get a non-paying tenant out. But it's still a hassle. You got to file for eviction. And sometimes, like in this case, the tenant gets a legal aid attorney, and sometimes you lose your case. You spend all this time and energy and you lose. So if you can catch landlords when they're frankly vulnerable, when they're thinking, maybe I don't want to do this anymore, and you make the same pitch that we just talked about with Mark and Addie, say, hey, look, I'll pay you, if the house is worth $112,000, just to make my math easy, I'll pay you $112,000. I'm not going to negotiate with you on the price. I'll pay you your price, but here's how I'm going to do it. $12,000 down, and the balance paid over the next 20 years at whatever I've already done my calculations to determine I can afford per month. And to a landlord that's getting zero, I mean, this guy stopped getting payments in August. They didn't pay him August, September, October, November, December, or January. And so he got nothing for a very long time. The idea of getting $12,000 upfront plus $500 a month, plus I never have to talk to Alyssa Clark or LaShawn Mattingly ever again in my life, that's worth a lot to a lot of landlords. And a lot of landlords are going to take a yes, yes. So a lot of landlords are going to take that into serious consideration and go, you know what? That sounds good. Let's do that deal. In which case, you will have just bought a $112,000 property for effectively $12,000 in, with a commitment to make $500 a month payments every month. And as long as you run your numbers, which we all on this call know how to do, to make sure that you can afford a $500 a month payment, or whatever the magic number ends up being, then you just bought a property that you didn't have to go get a loan for. So at no point is your credit going to be dinged or impacted at all. You could have filed bankruptcy yesterday and do a deal like this, but you now own, because this is a sale, a piece of real estate that you can now, if you want to hold on to it, that you can now collect rents on and make money without ever having to deal with the bank. And that, if you've ever had to deal with the bank before, you know that that's a huge, huge, huge plus. And so seller financing, in my opinion, especially now with so many landlords leaving the business, is the way to go. You need to understand how this strategy works, because this is going to be this is the best time ever in the last 50 years to try to get seller finance deals. And they're better. I don't care how great the interest rate is for a bank loan, it's still a bank. And that means even if you can get that 3.5% bank loan, you're signing personally for that loan. You're personally guaranteeing the payment of that loan. If that loan fails, not only can the lender go after and take the property back, they can go after you personally for all your assets. That's not the case here. In this case, the worst thing that Paul Bangle can do, if I bought this house from him, is take the house back. It's a non-recourse loan. It's structured as a non-recourse loan. And so I'm not signing a personal guarantee to Paul Bangle. I'm simply giving him the right to reclaim the property if I don't pay him. And that's a huge difference. And a whole lot of people I see who are yelling and screaming and pumping their fists about being able to get bank loans don't understand that, yes, it's a cheap loan, but you're putting yourself on the hook every single time you get into debt with the bank. Ask me how I know this. So that's the seller financing angle. And even if you don't do this with me, you need to understand how it works. And I'm not suggesting that you have to forever and ever do deals in Tulsa and that I get half your deals forever. I only get half of the deals that you do in Tulsa where I gave you the lead. If you find your own sellers and do your own deals, that's fine. I'm happy for you to outgrow me. I fully expect Souley to outgrow me. Maybe I can get another 10, 20 deals out of him, but at some point he's not going to need me. And I will celebrate that day, because that's the whole point of this. It's not for him to have to be reliant on me or anybody else, but that day is coming. Maybe he'll choose to work with me because I'm a fun guy to work with, but he won't have to. And that's the beauty of this, is that once you have the skill, you can do this anywhere and everywhere. And that's a superpower that I'd love to have everybody that's on this call to possess. So anyway, that's my offer. Again, if you're in the deal, if you're on this, in this group, and you got invited to this call, then you are automatically qualified and eligible. I'm not going to put a lot of fancy rigmarole. I'm probably going to deliver the leads through the HubSpot CRM, so you get a chance to get practice using a CRM if you've never used one before. HubSpot is my new CRM of choice, and that's how I'll be distributing the leads. I'm going to ask you to work the leads in HubSpot so that we can keep track of the interactions, and so that if for some reason you decide to leave and go away, at least somebody can follow up on that lead and pick up where you left off. But other than that, there's not going to be a lot of rules and regulations. If you work the leads, that's great. If you don't work the lead, then the leads will be taken from you, and someone else who can work them will work them. But there's no penalty. I'm not going to say bad things about you. All I'll say is, if you're not serious that you want to work these leads, just don't take them. It's pretty much the golden rule. If you don't want the food at the buffet, just don't put it on your plate. And if you put something on your plate that you really don't want, or you decide that you don't want, just let me know and I'll happily take it back and give it to somebody else. But these are leads that are hot, and that, as Souley demonstrated, can be, every one of these landlords is thinking to themselves right around now, why did I get involved in this? And what am I going to do? And how am I going to make my own mortgage payment? Because I'm not getting paid by the tenant. And so these are not BS leads. These are not time wasting leads. These are people who have a serious problem that hopefully we can solve for them. And if we can solve it in a way that makes sense for them and us, and if we're wholesaling it to an end buyer, then everybody gets paid. So I've been talking a whole lot, as I often tend to do on these calls. If no one has any questions, then I'm going to call it a day, but I'll pause and see if anyone has any questions for me.
I have a question.
Hey, Ikoi.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, I'm doing well.
Good.
I'm in New York, by the way.
Okay, so are you?
Well, yeah, I'm here. Yeah, actually, I'm going to see Miss Pinckney on Saturday.
Okay.
But yeah, so what's going on?
Okay, so as far as for seller financing, just say that you do have the contract, you have it, you've been paying and everything, but how about if something happens to the owner? Then what would happen, like, to the contract? Would you just lose that property, or? So
you've already closed?
Yeah.
Before they close. If you've already closed and something happens to them?
Yeah.
You have the deed. That's like saying, what happens if your bank goes out of business when they have your mortgage? Someone else will pick up that mortgage and expect you to pay them. So in this case, you would keep making payments to somebody, if not them, then to their estate. Let's say they die. If you're paying John Smith $500 every month, you'd keep paying John Smith until someone tells you, hey, stop paying John Smith and start paying, Jane Smith is now John's heir. Start making payments to her instead. And you go, okay, great. And you start making payments to her, but you don't care whether John is alive or not. As long as you keep making those payments, you're good to go. And when you
so their heirs, so their family member couldn't come and take the house from you?
No, they can't take the house from you. They have.
Well, they can stop the contract.
No. Again,
No?
So the contract is only useful up until the point in which we close. The contract says, I'm going to buy it. Let's say I'm buying it to keep. I buy it from John Smith for $112,000. The contract says I'll buy it from them for $112,000. I'm going to take the 112. Let's say take the whole thing subject to the whole thing with seller financing. So they're going to finance the full 112, 12,000 down, $500 a month until paid in full for 20 years, let's just say. Until we go to closing, I just have the contract. So if he dies between now and closing, then yeah, that's going to be a challenge because he won't get my money, but I won't get the property. But on the day of closing, at the end of that day of closing, I now have my name's on the deed. I own that property. So, and John has a lien, a first position lien. That means I owe him, I have to pay him $500 a month until paid in full on the balance. If John dies, I just keep paying whoever's John heir is. But if I stop paying, then they could foreclose. But as long as I'm paying somebody, then my account is in good standing, then my ownership is never in question.
Oh, okay. I wasn't thinking
take it back is if I stop making payments.
I wasn't thinking that you would be on the deed. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, we're on the deed. We get the deed. We always get the deed.
Okay.
And
yeah.
so
okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because I was Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, good question. Good question. And any other questions? And again, believe me, we'll be talking about this a lot. In fact, this is pretty much all I'm going to be talking about going forward, because when people come to me and say, hey, I want to learn how to talk to sellers, I'm going to go, great. I can give you plenty of practice talking to sellers. Talk to these 5 sellers in Tulsa. And if you can get a deal out of those, then we'll split those deals 50-50. So everything that you ask me from now on about real estate, unless it's in your market and you ask me a question about your deal, if it's about my deal, it's going to be one of the markets that I'm working. And Tulsa right now is not the only market I'm working, but it's the easiest market to work. And it's easiest to explain to people because they make it super easy. I was going to try to pull up for you just real fast, but I don't have the time. I didn't set it up. How easy it is to pull information, like to see how many other properties Paul Bengal owns in, let me do this. This is kind of cool.
I guess I had one question.
Sure.
This is regarding seller financing. Most of the landlords probably do not know. Well, I'm assuming some of them don't know what seller financing is. I know how to explain it pretty well, but I wanted to see your point of view. I wanted to see how you would explain it, what a seller is. Because I tell them, hey, you're basically becoming the bank, and kind of try to get as detailed as possible. I want to see how you explain it to them. I want to see if there's something different.
So and that's a fair question, and we'll be covering a lot of this in future training sessions. But let me just answer your question. The short answer is I never ever use the phrase seller financing when I'm talking to a seller, nor do I use subject to, for that matter. What I say is the same thing I just said here. I say, what if we paid you $12,000 down and $500 a month until paid in full? Would that work for you? And either they say no, or they say yes. And if they say yes, then we're done. How we get it done, they don't really care. I mean, at some point when we get down to the closing, they'll have to sign some documents and we'll have to explain to the title company or the closing attorney what we're doing, but that's a formality. If they like the idea of X amount down and X amount a month over so many months, if that sounds good to them, then that's what we're going to do. If they say, yes, that sounds like that would solve my problem, then I go, well, cool, let's do that. And that's it. I don't use the phrase seller financing. I don't use the phrase subject to because 2 reasons. One, because it scares them. And I definitely don't say, I want you to be the bank, because they don't know what that means. And that sounds scary. I don't want to be banks. Banks are big and fancy, and I'm not big or fancy. I say, if I paid you this much, would it help you, Mr. Seller, if I paid you X $1,000 at closing and Y $100 each month until paid in full for the next 20 years, or until paid in full, whichever is sooner? Would that help you? Would that make sense for you? Would that help you in the situation that you're in right now? Would that be of use to you? Because it's about them, right? It's not about me and what I'm going to do. It's about them and what they need. And if they say yes, that solves my problem and serves my needs, then cool, let's do that. And then I write that up. And in the agreement, it never says seller financing or subject to. It simply says, I'm going to pay you $12,000 at closing. I'm going to pay you $112,000 for your house. And here's how I'm going to do it. $12,000 up front and $100,000 paid in $500 a month increments over the course of however many months it is to pay $100,000 off at $500 a month. And that's it. And if they say yes to that and they sign that agreement, just for those of you who weren't here when I first said it, that's a 0% loan that I just secured for myself, because there's every time I pay $500, the balance goes down by $500. No portion of that is interest. It's all principal pay down. That's a 0% loan. That's like gold. No bank is giving 0% loans, at least not in the U.S. So you can't do that with a bank. No bank will ever go for that. Sellers go for that all the time. And it's not that they're going for it. It solves their problem. They don't care about, if they demanded interest, guess what? I'm going to pay you the same $500, but 390 of it's going to be, or 490 of it's going to be principal, and whatever the difference is going to be interest. So I'm not changing how much money I'm paying you. I'm just going to change how much of it's interest and how much of it's principal, because my numbers are my numbers. Does that answer your question, Souley? Does that help?
Yes. And you actually answered the second question about what if they wanted interest. So thank you.
Yeah, interest is, but keep in mind that you care about the total payment, principal plus interest. So if they want more interest, that's fine. That means I got to pay you less principal. And I don't say that to them. I just say, okay, if you need interest, then I'm going to pay you $500, and this much is going to be interest, and this much is going to be principal. But it's not going to change the amount that I'm paying, because I did my calculations, because I did the deal confidence training. I did my calculations to know exactly how much I can afford to pay per month in debt service. And debt service, as you might recall, was principal plus interest. So the two of them together are what I care about. And if it's $500, then $500 is all I can afford. I can't pay you $500 plus interest. I can pay you $500 that includes interest. But the $500 is going to be what it is. And I'll know what that number is based on running my numbers to see what kind of cash flow and what kind of cash on cash return I need to make this deal make sense. And then one last thing I'll throw out there, at the risk of overstaying my welcome and having people's heads explode, is that the reason why I'm such a big stickler, or big fan, I should say, of seller financing is not just for what it does for me. It's cool for me. But if I had to, I can get a loan because I'm a U.S. citizen. Think about what seller financing means to somebody who's trying to buy from outside of the country, who can't qualify for financing, who can't get FHA or VA or any other kind of US-based financing because they're not citizens. They're used to buying everything cash. If you go to those people with seller financed offers, they will kiss you on the lips because they can't get these kinds of deals any other way. And if you can structure seller finance deals, you'll have investors, foreign investors, fighting over them because they don't have this in their countries. Seller financing is not a thing pretty much any place else except for the US. And so structuring deals like this where they can buy a property without having to be a US citizen or get a loan from a bank is like unicorn horn or pixie dust for an investor, which means you can sell these things like hotcakes. And that's why I want them, because I know that if I can structure more of these deals, if I had 100 seller finance deals right now, I could sell 100 seller finance deals to foreign investors in the next 24, 48 hours, because they can't get the financing that we take for granted here. They can't qualify for FHA 3.5% down because they're not citizens. And so it's for them, it's either all cash or a horrible bank loan at 25% down and 10% interest. And they don't want that. So that's why seller financing is magic. We're going to shut it down. Thank you all for attending.
All right, that is the seller financing clip. To watch the other part of the Unstoppable Q&A video, please go check the links in the description below. Thank you so much for watching and have a great deal.